The media buildup for President Trump's sit-down with Vladimir Putin was as massive as for the old U.S.-Soviet summit meetings. And then came the dueling spin from both sides. We're back with the panel. Ed, you've covered some of these international meetings. Our journalists reduced to kind of sifting through the spin from both sides because we don't know what actually happened between the two presidents.
We don't, but there's another example where CNN, there's all kind of more of these GIFs and photos out there on the internet where, CNN before the meeting was out there pounding this narrative that, Donald Trump is not even going to raise election meddling with Vladimir Putin. And then he raised it. Now, we can argue, and it's going to be debated, did he raise it hard enough? Did he take Putin's answer at face value? But it reminded me of a few weeks ago before the James Comey testimony, where CNN was saying, sources say he's not going to back up the president on the idea that Comey told the president he wasn't under investigation. Then he testified, and he said, yeah, I did tell the president he was not under.
The president indeed brought it up, Mo, and Rex Tillerson told reporters that Trump pressed him more than once, turned out to be twice. Lavrov on the Russian side says, well, Trump accepted the statements of denial by Russia, and journalists were left to try to figure out where the truth lies.
Yeah, this is actually where I criticize. I think the media's spin about the dueling spin is actually off. Or this is where I think the media is getting it wrong. I actually think there isn't that much difference between Lavrov's account and Tillerson's
They're not necessarily contradictory.
Well, they're certainly not contradictory. Right. And to hear some of the media today, it sounds like these are two completely radically different perspectives. No, Lavrov said the president accepted our assurances. Tillerson said the president asked Putin. Putin answered no. He pushed back a little bit and then said, let's move on. That's actually not that radically different. And I personally think that's a problem, but it's not that different.
But also, President Trump started the meeting with it and spent like 5 minutes to his point on it. That's more than the media thought he was going to spend.
Do you think there was too much focus on that, as well as, please just spare me any more analysis of handshakes and body language?
That's what we were talking about that going forward. I was like, if I have to hear one more body language expert into it, what was going on in this meeting, I'm going to kill myself. But I will say, the problem with covering things like this, as a commentator, I'm not a journalist, but you get people from one side who are like, whatever happens, this is going to be a bromance. It's just going to absolutely be every fear you ever thought of the relationship between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. But on the opposite side, I got in a conversation on my show with one of our One Lucky Guys about how I think optics are still important, that if they were hugging and kissing each other on the cheek, it would optically be bad. And he said that that's not important at all. And I still think optics matter. So I think depending on how you view this president, it's sort of a personality test on how you think this meeting went.
Speaking of optics, what did you make? It started with a lot of outrage on Twitter, and then every news organization had a story on the fact that Ivanka Trump sat in for a few minutes, a G20 session on African health because the president had to leave the room. Didn't seem like that big a deal to me, but there was all this outrage about, well, who elected her, and the first family is running the country, and she's not qualified and all that.
Well, Angela Merkel, of all people, came out and defended her, and I guess there's a rule that if you leave, you can put your top-serving surrogate in to sit, and I guess President Trump left for another meeting, so I don't really understand what the scandal is.
Ivanka Trump is a White House official, right?
Yes, she's a top White House official, and I think this poor girl can't win for losing. I mean, people are just going after her for every reason. I didn't love the fact that she went on TV and said that she's, quote, not a political person. I think if you're working in the White House, you are innately a political person.
I think she meant,
that being said, sitting in on a meeting where it's perfectly normal protocol to do so and getting attacked so viciously on Twitter.
Optically, I don't know why she pushed the reset button. Oh, wait, no, that was Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry, that was someone else.
So now we have these headlines today. New York Times, maybe this is yesterday. Once dominant, the United States finds itself isolated at G20. Washington Post, summit exposes Trump's isolationism. So he's pushing
a narrative.
He's pushing the Europeans in particular on NATO, on trade, on climate change. He's taking a different position. That word isolating, I mean, isolationism, it's kind of like a dirty word in the journalistic lexicon, as opposed to he's challenging these other countries.
Sure, and rather than just going along with Angela Merkel. I mean, if you look at some of the pre-summit coverage, it was Angela Merkel trying to make sense of Donald Trump. She'll have to, lead the way because he may not want to focus on just her, and she's the lead dog here. Wait a second. Since when did the German chancellor lead American foreign policy? Under this administration or the Obama administration? Angela Merkel's views are important, of course, but she shouldn't have to drive it. And this president is showing leadership.
Do you think, Mo, that once the meeting, particularly the Putin meeting, was not a train wreck, and it seemed to be done professionally, that the media, which had low expectations for the president, just kind of moved on to other geopolitical issues?
I mean, look, I personally think that meeting was a train wreck for American foreign policy. I think the advanced people did a nice job. I think the advanced people did a nice job.
Wait, the Putin meeting?
Yeah, I think that was.
Didn't they get a Syrian ceasefire out of it? Is that a train wreck?
Well, we'll see what happens. It's not like.
Well, hold on, but that's not a train wreck.
Hold on, it's not like the Syrians and the United States have the same. Or I'm sorry, the Russians and the United States have the same objectives in Syria. He wants to prop
There
up
should be
Assad,
skepticism,
right?
but
that's your personal opinion. But get to your other point.
But to the point about the isolationism that we were talking about, the president was the only leader there who had pulled out of the Paris Accords. The president was saying things on trade that could lead to some trade wars. So on policy, the United States is more apart from the other 19.
Right,
you may embrace that. You may like
fine,
that.
But let me get Megan in our last half. He campaigned on these things. He said he was going to do these things, and now it's being portrayed as, America's its own island.
Angela Merkel, for a lot of people, too, is sort of the last figure of the progressive left. She came in an era with Obama, and she's really the last global figure still representing that. It's been taken over completely by populism globally. So I think when people are looking to her, it's simply just because she's the last remaining figure.
And by the way, at these summits, having covered them, when they say there's a big deal on climate change, oftentimes the fine print, we're going to do this in 2037 when they've all left office.
Ed Henry, Megan McCain, Moa Leafy, thanks very much. Coming up, Kellyanne Conway on the subject of sexism and the way the media treat her as the highest-ranking woman in the White House. And later, are journalists trumpeting too many conspiracy theories they find on Twitter?